I died on the night he took my younger half-sister as his concubine. Blood loss from childbirth, 2 lives ended in one night. When I woke up, I found myself back before my wedding day. The matchmaker came to the door with a marriage proposal. I gave a cold, indifferent laugh and turned away to marry his elder brother instead. Second miss, the carriage is ready, do you want to change clothes first? My personal maid, Bai Ling, frowned in worry, urging me on. Seeing me unmoved, she and the other maid, Yun Kei, exchanged glances. Today there's a polo match. He'll be there too. If it were my past life, I would have already been hurrying to dress up, eager to leave, lips painted, hair carefully arranged. I stitched the last seam, bit off the thread, and carefully wrapped up the leather knee pad I'd just finished making. Bai Ling's eyes lit up, immediately asking. Second miss, are you planning to give this to Lu family's second son? A few days ago, second young master Lu said in passing that his knees felt cold while reading at night. I'd run around looking for the best leather just to sew a knee pad for him, spending several nights to finish it. But in this life, I would never do such foolish things to please someone who never cherished me. No. Put it away. Next time mother sends things to elder brother, take it with you. Once I'd spoken, urged on by the maids, I reluctantly changed and went outside. In the carriage, my half-sister Jiang Yuehuan sat with her head bowed, speaking softly. Second sister, you're here. I gave her a faint smile, replying. I'm late, making third sister wait. What are you saying, second sister? It's a blessing to go out with you. She still had that soft, humble demeanor. In my past life, I was completely deceived by her appearance. Who would have thought this seemingly weak and harmless sister would secretly covet her own brother-in-law? At the polo grounds, the place was already bustling. Tents lined the field, and inside, young men and women rode horses, competing with great excitement. I found my family's tent and calmly took the seat of honor. Jiang Yuehuan settled quietly to one side. Everyone here was from noble families. On the field, 2 teams were locked in fierce competition. My gaze followed the young men in their splendid riding attire, finally resting on the most outstanding figure, Lu family's second son, Lu Shua. He held the reins with his left hand, swinging the mallet with his right, dashing and elegant. In my past life, I had adored him. In this life, I was utterly disgusted. I looked away coldly, only to catch Jiang Yuehuan's infatuated gaze fixed on Lu Shua. In my past life, she'd used the excuse of caring for my pregnancy to visit me every day. I thought she was a loving sister, never knowing she and second young master Lu had been secretly involved all along. Second young master Lu cared nothing for the child in my belly, insisting on marrying Jiang Yuehuan as his concubine. On their wedding night, I was so upset I went into early labor. The maids and midwife were sent to fetch help, but never returned. I lay exhausted on the bed, listening to the laughter and chatter from the front hall, utterly alone in the cold night. This time I will never let any of you hurt me again. I clenched my fists and steeled my resolve. When the incense had burned out, Lu Shua's team won and received the prize. Next round, the prize was a top-grade Duanqi inkstone. In my past life, to please Lu Shua, I went onto the field myself, won the match, and immediately presented the inkstone to him before everyone, causing a stir. It wasn't until years later I learned he'd never cared about the inkstone, he'd left it forgotten in a dusty corner. My eyes darkened. I told Bai Ling. Get ready. I want to compete. Bai Ling helped me tie my sleeves tightly. I took the mallet and mounted my horse. Since childhood, I'd excelled at riding, archery, polo, and other sports. This match was easy for me, I won the inkstone without much effort. Amidst the cheers, I took the prize. Turning, I saw Lu Shua standing with a group of young men. They joked and winked, even pushing Lu Shua forward, sure that I would present the inkstone to him. Looking straight ahead, I walked past them without hesitation. Lu Shua and his friends all wore looks of surprise. I returned to my pavilion, handing the wooden box with the inkstone to Bai Ling. Keep it safe for me. Yes, second miss. I untied my sleeves and took a sip of tea. In the next pavilion, the young ladies were discussing the handsome men on the field. "Who is that young man in black?" asked a girl in a yellow dress. "Which one?" Another, in green, replied. "The one standing just behind second young master." "Oh, that's the eldest son of the Lu family, Lu Xiuan, second young master Lu's older brother from a different mother." The girl in yellow was surprised. "Isn't he the maternal grandson of General Zhen Yuan, the one who enlisted alone?" "That's right. Haven't you seen him before?" The girl in green fanned herself and sighed. "He has such outstanding bearing, but his fate is unlucky. 3 years in the army, yet still only a 9th rank officer. His path ahead is bound to be difficult." I glanced over quietly, seeing the tall, handsome figure standing silently behind Lu Xiuan. Lu Xiuan's mother was the only daughter of General Zhen Yuan. She died young, and after that, the Marquis married Lu Xiuan's mother as his second wife. In my previous life, after marrying into the Lu family, I saw him less than 5 times. He was 3 years older than Lu Xiuan, quiet, skilled in both civil and martial arts, but too upright, not one to curry favor, and his maternal family gave him no support. By the time I died, he was still only a 7th-ranked deputy officer, and had never married. My father was a deputy minister at the Court of Judicial Review, while the Lu family held the hereditary title of Marquis of Wenchang. Our families had been close for generations, and an alliance was tacitly agreed. By right, I should have married the eldest son, Lu Xiuan, but since his mother died early and he wasn't favored by the family. My mother and Madame Nia, Lu Xiuan's mother, who were close friends, had long wanted to match me with Lu Xiuan. Since I was a child, it was set that I would marry Lu family's second son, who was 2 years older than me. Day after day, I clung to him, calling him second brother, shooing away any girl who tried to get close. But the goddess has dreams, and the prince has none. Lu Xiuan only liked delicate, gentle girls. He thought I was too blunt and rough. He married me only to please his mother, while I, naive, believed I had found my ideal husband. After returning from the racecourse, I learned that father had already returned from court, so I brought him the Duanqi inkstone as a gift. Father, hearing the origin of the inkstone, teased me. "What? Not giving it to Lu Xiuan?" I smiled innocently. Why would I give it to him? Of course, good things must be gifted to father first. Father affectionately patted my head. "What a cunning little fox you are." In my past life, father fell seriously ill out of anger over the affair between Jiang Yuehuan and Lu Xiuan. Reborn, I've seen through it all, especially those who wear masks of virtue while hiding double faces. I would never misplace my sincerity again, never let my loved ones be heartbroken and my enemies gloat. A few days later, the house held a banquet for grandmother's birthday. I sat together with my sisters from the clan. After 3 rounds of wine, feeling tipsy, I found an excuse to leave, taking Bai Ling and Yun Kei with me. I stepped out to the courtyard for some fresh air, when I heard voices not far away. Turning toward the moon gate, I saw a few family servants and a young master in brocade helping Lu Xiuan, who was staggering toward us. Lu Xiuan's face was flushed, his steps unsteady, obviously drunk. The brocade-clad young master, surnamed Shen, spotted me and looked utterly relieved, calling out. "Second miss, Lu Xiuan is drunk, and his clothes are soaked with wine. Could you have some maids help change his clothes, and ask the kitchen to prepare some sobering soup?" I remembered, in my past life, this encounter happened when I'd snuck out to find Lu Xiuan. Seeing him drunk, I hadn't cared about a girl's reputation, but rushed to take care of him anyway. Now, I wanted nothing more than to stay far from Lu Xiuan, not wishing for any more entanglements. Drunk or not, he was none of my concern. I turned to a young servant and said coolly. "Shirqing, you heard what young Master Shen said, didn't you? Go on then." With that, I bowed and excused myself to Shen and Lu Xiuan, whose faces showed surprise, and walked away with my maids without a backward glance. If I'd known, I would never have come out here. What bad luck! Just as I was heading back to my room, footsteps suddenly sounded behind me. "Second miss, please wait." The cold, slightly resentful voice belonged to Lu Shua. Hearing the strength in his tone, he hardly seemed drunk at all. Annoyed, I turned back and asked flatly, "Lu Shua, do you have something to say?" "To instruct you." "I wouldn't dare." Leaning against a peach tree, though he still reeked of wine, he looked mostly sober. He gave a faint smile. "Second miss, you seem too cold toward me lately. If you have something to say, just say it." Now, I found even a single extra word with him intolerable. "These days, on the polo field, you're cold to me. Today, seeing me drunk, you walked away without a word. Have I done something wrong to make you hate me so?" The way he spoke, as if I was the heartless one. If I didn't know him so well, I might have thought I truly meant something in his heart. I gave a faint, chilly smile. "In the past, Lei was young and ignorant, always pestering you. I hope you'll forgive me for that. Now we're both older, and it's time to discuss marriage seriously. Men and women should maintain proper distance. If you have anything to say, please have someone relay the message, so neither of our reputations is damaged." "You." My words seemed to choke him, he was left speechless. "Lu Shua, I'll head back now. Please excuse me." I dropped the fake smile, turned away, and had barely taken a few steps when I heard his cold laughter and mocking words behind me. What a clever way to use retreat as advance. I almost burst with anger, but managed to force a smile. "Is that the wine talking? Have Shurqing bring you some soup? Drinking too much is bad for your liver, you should take care." Not wanting to look at him another moment, I hurried back to my quarters. Retreat as advance. He really thought he was some rare treasure. Enough. It was my own lack of self-respect in my past life that let Lu Shua think he was my whole world. Lu Shua looked golden on the outside, rotten within. As for his mother, Madame Nya, she was even more vicious at heart. Before, out of respect for our family's friendship, she'd been polite to me, but the aunts and wives in his house were never easy to deal with. Last life, after marrying into the Lu family, I endured no end of humiliation because of them. Yet for Lu Shua's sake, I willingly put up with it all. This life, I'd rather marry an honest, simple man than step into that wolf's den again. Counting the days, I realized I was reborn at 15. A year from now, I'd have to marry into the Lu family, then die at 19. If I wanted to change my fate and avoid marrying Lu Shua, I had to act now. I had a fair bit of land and property, dozens of acres outside the capital, a manor, and several shops, all prepared by my parents as dowry. In my past life, Lu Shua wasted his days in brothels and gambling dens, squandering the family fortune. Afraid he'd be punished by his father, I foolishly sold off my own dowry to cover for him. In this life, I would hold tight to my dowry, use these years of youth to find ways to make money, so I'd have the means to protect myself in the future. As summer approached, I disguised myself and rode out to visit my own farmland. Wearing a gauze hat, I walked down golden waves of rice. Before coming, I had sent a letter to the steward who managed the land. He now waited for me at the field's edge, taking me on a tour and reporting the harvest. Seeing some farmhands catching pests in the fields, I asked, "Are there any locusts?" The steward wiped his brow and respectfully answered, "Second miss, early this month we discovered some larvae. No matter how many we kill, their numbers keep growing." I remembered the locust plague from my previous life. Miles of land ruined, not a single grain harvested. After that, I researched and found many effective ways to deal with locusts. I told the steward, "Divide the field into two, make one half into a paddy. Locusts hate water. Also, plant peas, sesame, and other crops locusts dislike. And bring in ducks. While the locusts can't fly yet, have the ducks eat them all up. The ducks will get fat and can be sold for a profit. Two birds with one stone." Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I will remember everything, second miss. The steward nodded repeatedly. I added, Share these methods with the other farmers too, so they can prepare early. If there's a plague, it's not just my land that will suffer. Looking over, I saw my own fields totaled just over 200 acres. At the foot of the mountain was another large, fertile plot whose owner I didn't know. Whose land is that? I asked. Second miss, it belongs to a steward surnamed Sunday. They say he's only managing it for someone else, the real owner keeps out of sight. I didn't ask further, just took a walk around and returned to my carriage. The road wound up into the mountains, when suddenly, loud shouts rang out. The carriage was blocked. The coachman cried out in fear. What do you want? A rough-looking man shouted. Leave a toll if you want to pass. Bandits. My heart skipped. Bai Ling and Yun Ke were so frightened they collapsed on the seats. I'd only brought one coachman and a young page, the rest were all women, with little chance of escape. Having died once already, I believed that life and death were all destined. Faced with this situation, I immediately calmed myself. I called out loudly from within the carriage. Good sirs, if it's only money you want, I'll leave everything I have, just please don't harm anyone. My voice stirred a commotion among the bandits outside. There's a young girl inside. What a pleasant voice. Drag her out and see. They started to climb onto the carriage. The coachman and the page tried to block them in terror. One bandit rushed to the window to pull open the curtain. Bai Ling and Yun Ke screamed, desperately clutching the drapes. In the chaos, suddenly there was a shrill cry outside, the same bandit who'd just demanded a toll. Next, a low, commanding male voice sounded. Bold enough to rob and block the road in broad daylight, do you even care about the king's law? That voice. While I was still guessing, the bandits began cursing, and the sound of a fierce fight broke out. Unable to resist, I peeked through the curtain. I saw a man wielding a Dayan-carved staff, battling 5 bandits at once. The staff in his hands moved like a coiling Dayan, sweeping, striking, keeping the bandits at bay, beating them back one by one. The man turned, and when I saw his face clearly, I quickly let the curtain drop. It was Lu Xiuan. The bandits, wailing like bereaved children, quickly fled. The coachman bowed repeatedly to Lu Xiuan, words tumbling out in gratitude. Thank you for saving us. I couldn't reveal myself, so I sat straight in the carriage and called out. Thank you, sir, for your help. I will never forget this kindness. If there's ever a chance, I will surely repay you. Lu Xiuan, upright and righteous, replied. It was just the right thing to do, no need to mention it. I'll take my leave. Through the crack in the curtain, I watched him lead his attendant deeper into the forest. I hadn't expected to meet Lu Xiuan here, though I didn't know why he had come. Still, I had no time to wonder about him. The days left to me were not many. Time passed. Every day, I busied myself learning accounting, keeping the books. Any spare money I had, I used to buy more land and shops. I knew that in 3 years, the small shops on Baisher Street would boom, so I boldly bought up a whole row of storefronts on the main road. With the income from renting shops and farmland, I used part of the money to lend out as loans, and even stocked up on gold. Immersed in these enterprises, I felt an unprecedented peace of mind. 2 months went by. One day, Mother insisted on taking me out to Taoyuan Monastery to offer incense and pray for blessings. Taoyuan Monastery was always crowded, famous for granting wishes for good marriages. Many unmarried young men and women came with their families to pray. At first, I wanted to find an excuse to refuse, but remembered that in my previous life, Mother had brought me here at this very time, and by chance, we ran into Madame Nya, Lu Shua's mother. Back then, the moment I saw Lu Shua, I followed him like a bee to honey, pestering him to take me sightseeing. On the way, he picked a hibiscus flower and handed it to me. I was moved to tears, foolishly believing he had feelings for me. Who knew this was one of his old tricks? Every maid in the house had once received a flower from him. I'd been so naive as to press that flower, keeping it as a memento at my bedside, gazing at it every day. Thinking back on the stupid things I'd done, I felt both embarrassed After mother got in the carriage and saw Jiang Yuehuan there, she was wide-eyed in surprise. Before she could say anything, I took her hand and sweetly explained. Mother, third sister would be lonely at home, so I brought her along for some cheerful company on the road. Mother gave me a look but said nothing more. At the foot of the mountain before Taoyuan Monastery, sure enough, I saw the carriage of the Marquis Wenqin household. Mother and Madame Nye greeted each other warmly, chatting as friends, while I stood behind with a smile, never glancing at Lu Shua. As my gaze swept past, I caught Jiang Yuehuan stealing a shy, lovesick look at Lu Shua. I smiled coldly and ascended the steps with mother. After the incense offering, the two mothers wanted to consult the Taoist priest for a fortune reading, leaving us free to wander. A young Taoist boy told us, "There's a crystal-clear spring in the woods behind, with sweet water, many visitors go there to fetch it. You should try as well." I already knew about this, that hibiscus branch came from that very place. The two mothers cheerfully told us to bring back some spring water. The servants and maids prepared bottles, lining up to fetch the water. I purposely lagged behind, letting Jiang Yuehuan and Lu Shua go ahead. Halfway there, I suddenly stumbled to one side. Oh no! Bai Ling and Yun Ke hurried to steady me. Lu Shua looked back in surprise, and Jiang Yuehuan rushed over with a worried face. "Second sister, are you all right?" "It's nothing, just twisted my ankle a bit." I waved my handkerchief and answered calmly. Bai Ling and Yun Ke helped me sit on a roadside boulder. I turned to Jiang Yuehuan and Lu Shua. "I'll be fine after a rest. You two go on and fetch the water." "How could we?" Jiang Yuehuan softly replied. "I'll stay with second sister." If I hadn't already seen her true face, I might have been moved by her concern. The more I despised her, the brighter my smile became. "Thank you, third sister, but I'm fine. Go get the water, don't delay, and remember to bring some back for me." I had Bai Ling hand my bottle to Jiang Yuehuan's maid. Though she said she wanted to stay, after hearing this she feigned regret, but left with Lu Shua anyway. Before leaving, Lu Shua glanced back at me several times. I smiled as I watched them disappear into the forest, then immediately stood up as if nothing had happened. "Let's go," I told the maids, who still stood frozen. Yun Ke stammered. Second, miss, your ankle." Bai Ling, quick-witted, pinched her and signaled her to be quiet. I found a small pavilion and told Bai Ling and Yun Ke to set out the tea set. As I sipped hot tea, I admired the autumn scenery. About 3/4 of an hour later, Lu Shua and his party returned. I saw that Jiang Yuehuan now wore a fresh pink hibiscus flower in her hair. I smiled and said, "That flower looks wonderful on you, third sister. Reminds me of the saying, no hibiscus can match the beauty of a fair maiden's face." "Don't tease me, second sister." Jiang Yuehuan blushed, head lowered. I didn't ask where the flower came from, just smiled and had Bai Ling brew tea with the spring water. Lu Shua and Jiang Yuehuan sat down. I made a point of praising how well-matched they were, how handsome and lovely together, earning several sharp looks from Lu Shua. Jiang Yuehuan blushed deeper, unable to speak. On the way back, Lu Shua suddenly spoke. "Second miss, may I borrow you for a word in private?" I could guess what he wanted, it was always things like, "What are you up to? What's your game?" I smiled brightly. "Just say whatever you want right here." He glanced around and signaled the others to step away. I stopped him. "No need for that. Gentlemen have nothing to hide." Jiang Yuehuan and the others exchanged looks. Lu Shua, jaw clenched, asked, "What are you trying to do?" As expected, I knew him like the back of my hand. I replied calmly, "I'm not up to anything. If you just want to repeat those empty questions, then I'll take my leave." With that, I turned and walked away at my leisure. What could I possibly be up to? I only hoped that Lu Shua and Jiang Yuehuan would become a perfect pair, two turtles in a pond, each pleased with the other. A true gentleman helps others fulfill their wishes. Jiang Yuehuan was always the most suitable to compose poetry and admire the moon with him. It was just a pity that, as a concubine's daughter, Jiang Yuehuan could only dream of marrying into the marquis's household as the main wife. And in my clan, no girl had ever stooped to be a concubine. If she hadn't been so proud, she could have found a good family and become a proper wife. I no longer cared about them. All the pain from my previous life was because I gave my heart to the wrong person, no one else was to blame. After being reborn, I never once thought of revenge. In this life, I just want to live for myself. They can do whatever they want, as long as it doesn't affect me. In the blink of an eye, autumn gave way to winter. In less than 2 months, it would be New Year's. As the year ended, I followed custom and went to check the accounts at the pawnshop. The manager was in the back with me, going over the ledgers, when a noisy argument suddenly broke out in the front. I listened closely as the shop clerk said, "Sir, it's written black and white on the pawn ticket, 3 strings of cash. I even counted it out for the old lady. Now you say it's short, who knows if she lost some on the way home?" A young man's angry voice protested. "My nurse only brought back 2 strings and 800 coins. She said you told her it was 2 strings and 800. She can't read, you clearly cheated her." The shop clerk wouldn't back down. "Cheated? Do you have any witnesses or evidence?" The young man retorted. "The witness is my nurse. The money she brought home was untouched. Now I want to redeem her hairpin, how much do I have to pay?" "Whatever is written on the ticket, of course." Hearing the commotion, the manager hurried out to smooth things over, speaking gently. "Sir, please calm down." The young man's voice sounded familiar. I glanced through the crack in the door. The one arguing with the shop clerk, face flushed with anger, who else but Lu Xiuan? Beside him, an old woman with white hair wiped her eyes. "Yuan, just forget it, it's all my fault, these old hands and eyes. Let's not argue with them." Lu Xiuan gritted his teeth and said bitterly. "No, Nanny Shen, even if it's not much money, we can't swallow this injustice. A merchant must be honest. How can they mix black and white, lying and cheating like this?" As the clerk tried to argue back, the manager quickly intervened again. Now I understood what was going on. Lu Xiuan had once saved me, I'd been thinking about how to repay his kindness. While they were still arguing, I called Bai Ling over and whispered, "Tell Steward Wang that this gentleman is an acquaintance of mine. Have him immediately return the hairpin to the old lady." "Yes, second miss." Bai Ling went out and whispered to Steward Wang. The manager's face lit up, he quickly told the clerk to return the hairpin. Lu Xiuan tried to pay the 2 strings and 800 coins, but the manager refused, saying, "This is a gift from our master to you, sir." "Who is your master?" Lu Xiuan asked. Steward Wang, being clever, simply smiled and said nothing. Lu Xiuan turned his gaze to Bai Ling, who shrank back nervously toward me. In the end, he left the money, took the hairpin, and departed with his nurse. I couldn't help but sigh. Thinking of Lu Shua wasting silver in brothels, casually throwing out dozens of taels for flowers and wine, while the dignified eldest son of the marquis's household like Lu Xiuan was quibbling over a mere 200 coins. Who knew why his nurse had to pawn a hairpin, but it was obvious they'd fallen on hard times. How unfairly the marquis's house treated its eldest son, it was simply contemptible. This life, I saw ever more clearly that Lu Shua was just a frivolous wastrel, utterly lacking the strength of character of Lu Xiuan. How blind I'd been to ever love such a useless man. When I got home, Mother had someone summon me. She greeted me with a few gentle words, then said, "Lei, a few days ago I met with Madame Nye again, and she brought up the matter between you and Shua." At those words, a bad feeling rose in my chest. Sure enough, Mother continued. "I think you'll turn 16 next spring, and Shua will be 17. You're perfectly matched in age, it's time to talk about marriage." The inevitable had finally come. I took a deep breath and kept my face calm. The eldest son of the marquis's house hasn't married yet. If the second son marries first, won't people talk? Mother dabbed her lips with a hank. Besides, you know his situation, what respectable family would marry their daughter to him? Surely you don't expect Shua to go without a wife, just waiting for his elder brother. Frankly, the less he came home, the better. Each to their own, nobody would bother me. I'd even prefer a husband who was always away. As I mulled over my thoughts, Mother rambled on. Next year, Shua has to take the imperial exam. Madame Nya said it would be good to find him a bride to look after him, help him settle down and study harder. You and Shua grew up together, she feels safest leaving him in your care. Grew up together. I sneered inwardly. After I married into their house in my last life, I found out he kept a whole harem of chambermaids. Any servant with a bit of beauty couldn't avoid his attentions. Madame Nya ruled the house with an iron fist, so the servants never dared breathe a word. That's why outsiders always thought Lu Shua was just a playful youth, nothing more. After marriage, to help him focus on his studies, I played the villain countless times, driving out all those bees and butterflies from his rooms, earning a reputation as a jealous shrew. So many nights I burned the lamp with him, helping him cram for the exams. I can't even remember how many days and nights went by. After all that, when he finally scraped through as a scholar, he strutted about as if he'd accomplished the world, never once grateful to me. On the contrary, he used it as an excuse to bring in even more maids and take new concubines. He even doted on a courtesan named Shui Xian, keeping her as his personal pleasure. Shui Xian, not qualified to be a concubine, was made his mistress outside the household. Later, Shui Xian fell pregnant with his child and came demanding status, only to be beaten by Madame Nya and thrown out. She miscarried, her health ruined, and ended up sold to human traffickers. Shui Xian's fate was tragic, but Lu Shua only mourned for 2 days before returning to his nightly pleasures. Only then did I realize he was truly heartless and cold. Mother was still discussing marriage, saying that after the new year, she would ask a matchmaker to arrange the engagement. I nodded obediently. I'll follow whatever Mother decides. But inwardly, I was already making plans. Marry Lu Shua. That would be nothing short of dying all over again. There was no way I would let that happen. I immediately sent Bai Ling to find someone to follow Lu Shua's movements. 2 days later, she reported back. Today, Lu Shua went to Baihua Pavilion, happily drinking with several courtesans, including Shui Xian. I remembered well, Shui Xian was hardly a gentle soul. She'd been entangled with several young men, all in hopes that someone would redeem her and take her as a concubine, so she could change her fate. Among those pursuing her was someone surnamed Bui, whose family ran a prosperous fabric business and was connected to many officials. He was arrogant and reckless, often heard to start drunken fights in the street, always using money to smooth things over. In my previous life, when Shui Xian, pregnant, went to Lu Shua and was turned away, she had wept and regretted. If I'd known, I'd have chosen young Master Bui. At least young Master Bui has a conscience, he'd have given me status. This young Master Bui she spoke of was none other than that very same young master. How interesting, I thought to myself. The bait was set, let's see who would bite. One day, hearing that Lu Shua was once again drinking with Shui Xian at Baihua Pavilion, I sent Bai Ling to secretly inform young Master Bui. That night, I turned down the lamps early and slept soundly, dreamless. The next morning, as I joined Mother for breakfast, her trusted nurse, Mama Chu, rushed in and whispered something in her ear. Mother's face changed immediately. Is this true? Tell me everything. I pricked up my ears. Mama Chu glanced nervously at me, so I teased. Mama Chu, what's so important that even I can't hear? She forced a smile. Oh, it's nothing. Just some unsavory business. I was afraid it would upset Second Miss. Mother dabbed her mouth with a handkerchief, keeping her dignified air as mistress of the house. Go on, let her hear. She'll find out sooner or later anyway. Mama Chu hesitated. It's just. Last night, the second son of the Marquis Wenxin's house got into an argument with another young master while drinking, and accidentally, injured him. She spoke in circles. I doubted it was that simple. Was it serious? I asked. I'm not sure. But I heard the other family isn't letting it go, they might even take it to court. Oh. I feigned indifference. Mother, thinking I was worried for Lu Shua, tried to reassure me. Probably just some ruffians trying to blackmail him for money, knowing he's the Marquis' son. With some silver, it'll all blow over. But I didn't think young Master Bui would give up so easily. I was simply waiting for the show. The people I sent to investigate soon returned with news. Last night, young Master Bui had gone to Baihua Pavilion and, out of jealousy over Shu Xian, fought with Lu Shua. Lu Shua, having studied martial arts for years, broke young Master Bui's arm. Young Master Bui's family immediately dragged Lu Shua to the Kaifeng magistrate to report the crime. The magistrate, seeing it was the Marquis' son who caused injury, didn't dare make a rash decision and had him held for trial. The Wenqin Marquis' name was weighty, any scandal would shake the whole city. The Marquis tried to settle it with money, but the Bui family refused, insisting on bringing Lu Shua to court. Now the two families were locked in a fierce standoff at the Yamen, neither side backing down. At first, Mother didn't pay much attention, thinking it was just a minor affair. But when news of the case spread throughout the capital and even Madame Nia had to run around calling in favors, Mother finally realized the gravity of the situation. What should we do now? Mother turned to Father. If Shua ends up in prison, he won't be able to sit for the civil service exam, will he? Father, Deputy Minister of the Court of Judicial Review, understood perfectly. Stop worrying about other people's sons, he replied. Mother lowered her voice. Can't you help him somehow? Who knows, maybe he'll be your son-in-law one day. Father's face hardened. What do you know? In the capital, under the emperor's nose, this is exactly the time to avoid suspicion. If I intervene, others will seize on it to criticize us. Mother pleaded. But Madame Nia already said she'd send a matchmaker after the new year. Arlei loves Shua so much, surely they'll marry sooner or later. Now that the moment had come, I stepped forward. Father, Mother. I bowed, meeting both their startled gazes, and said seriously. I do not wish to marry the second son of the Lu family. You. Mother, too shocked to scold me for eavesdropping, blurted out. What nonsense is this? Mother, the second son of the Lu family keeps a harem of concubines, frequents brothels, and is utterly dissolute. A husband like that, I would never dare wish for. I laid bare Lu Shua's true nature. Mother refused to believe it. Who told you such slander? You and Shua grew up together. If anyone knows his character, it's you, not those idle gossips. Mother, there are no walls without cracks. If you doubt me, find someone you trust to ask the Lu household servants. I swear before heaven and earth, I haven't fabricated a single word. The second son of the Lu family has done many disgraceful things. The servants keep silent only out of fear of Madame Nia's power. Mother was speechless, Father still silent. I pressed on. He even made his own maid pregnant, Madame Nia forced an abortion that cost her life. Even if I were reckless, I'd never joke about something so grave. These things, I'd known as soon as I married into the Marquis' house in my last life. At the time, I'd been so bewitched, seeing only his virtues, even scolding that made us shameless. Who would have thought, a few years later, I'd meet the same end myself? Truly ironic. But, how could this be? Mother struggled to find words, but Father cut in. I've heard about this. The maid's family wanted to sue, but the Lu family paid to hush it up. Mother was so shocked she couldn't close her mouth. Father sighed. I thought it was just a rumor, I never imagined it was true. It took Mother a long moment to find her voice. But our families have always been close. They've already made preparations to propose marriage. If we turn away now, won't we be seen as heartless and ungrateful? I responded promptly. The Lu family doesn't only have Lu Shua. If the two families want an alliance, it doesn't have to be through him. Both mother and father were stunned. Mother couldn't believe it. My quiet words changed both their expressions. You must be mad. Mother slammed her hand on the table. The eldest son of the Liu family lives like a servant in his own house. If you marry him, people will laugh at you. Honestly, if I could choose, I'd rather never marry at all. But with no better option, marrying Liu Xiuan was the best path I could see. Wouldn't people laugh if I married Liu Shua? I countered. If I'm to be mocked anyway, I'll at least choose someone I can respect. Mother stared at me. You like the eldest son of the Liu family. It's not about like or dislike. I answered firmly. But between him and Liu Shua, I'd choose him any day. But he. Mother just couldn't accept exchanging a brilliant son-in-law for one she saw as lowly, as if trading pearls for pebbles. She protested. The matter with Shua isn't settled yet. If he gets out of this trouble, maybe he'll mend his ways. When he passes the exams and becomes a high official, who'll remember any of this? Repent. I sneered to myself. Mother, mountains may move, but character does not. A man without virtue will fall, no matter how high he climbs. I spoke steadily. Don't look down on the eldest son of the Liu family. There's an old saying, not to disdain the poor in youth. He's earned his place in the army. Besides, he's the legitimate heir. Now that Liu Shua's reputation is ruined, who knows who'll inherit the title when the marquis dies? Mother was left speechless. Of course, I was lying with open eyes. Liu Xiuan's future wasn't smooth at all. But I didn't care. Even if he spent his life as a minor officer, I had enough wealth to live peacefully, never worrying about food or clothes. And if he turned out to be as heartless as his brother, I was still more than capable of protecting myself. Father, who had been silent the whole time, finally agreed. The eldest son may not have a high post, but everyone praises him as honest, broad-minded, and courageous. He will achieve something. Yes, I value his integrity above all. With father's support, I knew this outcome was finally possible. Mother, seeing the two of us united, couldn't object any further. And so, it was settled. As for Liu Shua, he managed to avoid prison in the end, but only after being thoroughly humiliated. He had to redeem Shui Xian, prepare a lavish gift, and personally deliver her to the Bui household. He even had to kneel and beg young Master Bui to forgive him. Young Master Bui accepted the gifts, insulted him soundly, and finally withdrew the charges. The whole city laughed at Liu Shua. All the girls who once admired him now kept their distance. He hid at home for a long time, not daring to go out. After the Lantern Festival, the Liu family finally sent a matchmaker to our home. I hid in the side hall and overheard Mother say to the matchmaker, "The marriage is agreed, but our family's choice is the eldest son. Go back and tell your mistress, if the eldest son is to marry my daughter, pick an auspicious day and come discuss the dowry." The matchmaker couldn't believe her ears, asking several times to confirm. Only after being sure did she reluctantly agree and leave. News traveled quickly in the Liu household. Madame Nia and Liu Shua, upon hearing this, were said to have smashed furniture and cursed our family for betrayal. Let them curse. With the Marquis household's reputation in tatters, no other noble family wanted to marry their daughter there. In the eyes of outsiders, Liu Xiuan was far beneath Liu Shua. But everyone could see our family would rather choose the neglected eldest son than give our daughter to the notorious wastrel. No one could fault us, no matter the gossip. Of course, for Liu Shua, this was the ultimate humiliation. The Liu family, after weighing everything, finally agreed to the match. We accepted the betrothal gifts, exchanged birth dates, and set the wedding date. Mother, both happy and anxious, feared I'd be wronged after marriage, so she added extra riches to my dowry. On my wedding day, the red bridal procession stretched for miles. Everyone in the capital sent their blessings. Liu Xiuan rode a tall horse, dignified and handsome. No matter what the truth inside the family, the Liu household could not lose face. Though Lu Xiuan was not favored, the wedding procession was grand, drums and gongs, red lanterns leading the way, the column of carriages stretching as far as the eye could see. It was no less splendid than my wedding to Lu Shua in my past life. The sound of firecrackers and cheers shook the streets. Aunts and nannies led me, round fan in hand, into the bridal sedan. I caught a glimpse of Lu Shua standing in the wedding crowd. His face clouded, his eyes dark, not even bothering with a fake smile. I used to think his defeat would bring me satisfaction. But now, there was not a ripple in my heart. I'd long since let go, his fate meant nothing to me. I barely spared him a glance, and instead, peered through my fan at my new groom. Lu Xiuan wore red wedding robes, tall and imposing, with a strikingly handsome face. The more I looked, the more pleasing he became. They say, choose a wife for her virtue, a husband for his character. Whatever else happened, Lu Xiuan's integrity and willpower were things I truly respected. Even if he remained a mere minor officer for life, I would not regret giving myself to him. That night, in the bridal chamber, Lu Xiuan sat shyly beside me. For me, it was like a second marriage. Compared to his flustered demeanor, I was perfectly at ease. I set down my fan, rested my chin in my hand, and quietly watched his awkward movements. He was so uncomfortable under my gaze that he finally blurted, "Wife." He stammered, unable to finish. To spare him, I spoke first. "My lord, this phoenix coronet is so heavy, it's hurting my neck." He hurried to remove it for me. Seeing the mark it left on my forehead, he was distressed and used his calloused hands to gently massage the spot. After a moment, perhaps finding this too intimate, he shyly pulled back, watching my expression. His hands were rough, and the massage was clumsy, but my heart filled with bittersweet emotion. My eyes burned with unshed tears, a mist clouding my vision. In my previous life, on my wedding night with Lu Shua, he was so drunk he could barely stand. I had to undress and remove his shoes for him. In the middle of the night, he'd roll over, heavy and rough, with not a care for my pain. "Thank you, my lord." I smiled softly at Lu Xiuan. He looked dazed, lips parted as if to speak, but swallowed the words. "It's late," I said, "let me help you rest." I reached out to unfasten his belt, but he gently caught my hand, his large, warm palm enveloping mine. "Wife." He gazed deeply into my eyes, then asked softly, "Why did you choose me as your husband?" I knew what he meant. He was wondering why I had turned away from Lu Shua to marry him. After all, in everyone's eyes, I had always been the shadow trailing after Lu Shua. Who could have expected that in the end, I'd marry the one no one valued? I answered plainly. "You are upright and steadfast, a true gentleman. To marry you is my good fortune." He squeezed my hand tighter and asked again. "The woman in the carriage that day, was that you? And the owner of the pawnshop, also you?" Lu Xiuan was no fool, he must have discovered something. "Yes, it was me." I admitted it directly. "So, did you choose me just to repay a debt of gratitude?" His voice was low and a little rough, with an emotion I couldn't quite read. I drew my hand back and gently tapped his cheek, smiling softly. "It's because of gratitude, but not only that." I explained clearly. Our families were set on forming an alliance. I knew your younger brother was not someone I could marry. You not only saved me, but you were also a man of integrity. My father values you highly. I believe you will never let me down." I wasn't sure if he was satisfied with my answer. But after hearing it, he lifted my hand and pressed a gentle kiss to the back of it, his eyes steady and determined. "I will never let you down." His look set me ablaze with warmth. To change the subject, I asked, "Why were you on the mountain that day?" He replied quietly, "It was my mother's death anniversary. On my way up the mountain for the memorial, I saw bandits attacking travelers, so I stepped in. I never expected." I finished for him. "Never expected it would tie us together in marriage." Lu Xiuan blushed. I smiled. Take me with you to offer incense to your mother someday, will you? Of course. He replied at once, then went on to recount the pawnshop matter. That day, my nurse had no money for medicine and didn't dare tell me, so she secretly pawned a— I was afraid you'd misunderstand, so I must explain. Narration really did bring home only 2 strings and 800 coins. I lost my temper when I learned she'd been cheated, and said some harsh words. I nodded. I've investigated thoroughly. Some clerks were indeed skimming off pawn tickets and pocketing the difference. They've all been dismissed. His nurse didn't even have money for medicine. I could imagine how hard their life was in the Marquis' household. If he truly was someone worthy of my trust, I would make sure to look after everything for him. Lost in thought, I suddenly realized Lu Xiuan was kneeling to help remove my shoes and stockings. Startled, I understood his intent, and my cheeks turned red. His handsome face drew closer. I held my breath, slowly closing my eyes. Moonlight shone on a wanderer's return, mountain flowers bloomed bright. In this moment, I truly said farewell to the past and began a new life. The next day, I went with Lu Xiuan to visit his mother's grave. Narration stood nearby burning offerings. Lu Xiuan bowed and prayed, telling his mother that he was now married, hoping she would be at peace. On the 3rd day after our wedding, we returned to my family home. Father and mother, seeing my radiant face and knowing Lu Xiuan treated me well, finally felt at ease. On the 7th day, Lu Xiuan had to return to the army. Just like in my past life, the days in the Marquis' household were far from peaceful, especially with Madame Ye, Lu Xiao's mother. She despised me for making her son lose face. Every 3 days or 5, she and the other concubines would join forces to make things difficult for me. I didn't care. Their petty tricks were always the same, making me kneel in the ancestral hall to copy maxims, or grounding me in my room. But I still had food, drink, and servants. Nothing hurt, nothing stung. Before marrying into the Marquis' house, I had already purchased a house of my own, planning to move out at the first good opportunity, avoiding entanglements with them. As for Lu Xiao, I heard that ever since I entered the household, he'd grown even more unstable, unable to focus on his studies, frequently losing his temper with the servants. My courtyard wasn't close to his, but the house was small enough that we crossed paths often. Every time we met, his eyes were full of resentment and anger, as if I'd betrayed him. There were less than 2 months before he was to take the Triennial Palace exam. Madame Ye, knowing he cared about me, only made things harder for me. A month later, the army sent news of victory. Lu Xiuan was credited for his service in suppressing a rebellion and promoted 2 ranks, now a deputy captain. In my past life, it took him 2 years to reach this rank. Now, our lives entangled, both our fates had changed. When news of the honor reached the house, I was being punished by Madame Ye, forced to kneel in the ancestral hall. There's no need to mention how it began. That morning, I'd wanted to go out to review the accounts, but the page at the door blocked my way. Bai Ling argued, and the page even dared to push her. When Madame Ye heard, I tried to explain, but she pinned all the blame on me, accusing me of disrespect and rebellion. That night, when Lu Xiuan returned home with his commendation, he flew into a rage upon hearing what happened, wanting to confront Madame Ye. His defense moved me deeply, but I stopped him. My lord, I wish to discuss something with you. I told him my wish to split from the main family and live separately. He understood how hard life had been for me and had thought of this himself. Now that he was married, as long as the Marquis agreed, we could move into the house I'd already bought. His only worry was father's approval. He knew the Marquis cared about appearances, afraid people would gossip if his son moved out right after marrying. Don't worry, I assured him, leave it to me. In Madame Ye's eyes, I was already a thorn she wanted gone. She would gladly see us out of the house. With her pushing, I had no fear the Marquis would refuse. Lu Xiuan nodded. If we split from the family, I only want my mother's keepsakes. As for the Marquis' property, I'll take nothing. Yes. The things from your mother, and your wedding gifts, none of that can be missing. I asked him a few more things, piecing together my own plan. The next day, Lu Xiuan returned to the army camp. I took the opportunity to seek out Madame Nye, bringing up the matter of splitting from the main family directly. She spoke a few words of reproach, but I knew she'd long wished to see us gone from the household. Even so, she pressed, asking if I meant to make her look heartless in front of others. I calmly replied, "Your daughter-in-law lacks proper manners, always troubling mother. Thankfully, you have always been tolerant and helped resolve everything. Now, with the exams approaching, you have enough to manage for second young master. If my troubles interfere with his studies and harm his future, I wouldn't know how to bear the blame. It would be better if I moved out, so you could finally enjoy some peace." Mentioning Lu Shua, Madame Nye certainly understood what I was hinting at. All appearances aside, anyone who got in the way of her son's civil service exam would forever be a sinner in her eyes. She feigned some reluctance, but eventually agreed to discuss it with the Marquis. The Marquis was, of course, displeased about dividing the family, but could not resist Madame Nye's persuasion and finally gave his consent. I requested the return of Lu Xiuan's mother's keepsakes and dowry. No one dared object. I had already prepared a detailed list to present to Madame Nye. "Mother, here is the dowry list of Madame Dong, which I had copied from the records at the General Zhenyuan's estate." Though the Dong family had now declined, they once enjoyed imperial favor. Madame Dong's grandfather was a founding minister. The marriage between the Lu and Dong families was decreed by the emperor. According to grandmother, when Madame Dong married, the Empress Dowager and Empress themselves bestowed jewels and treasures in a mountain-like heap, no less grand than a princess's wedding. The old nurse beside Madame Nye scoffed. "Well, my lady, do you really need to check every item? Are you afraid the main lady is hoarding things from you on?" I smiled pleasantly. Of course I trust mother. But after so many years, there are bound to be omissions. It's best to be thorough, whether things are missing or extra, it's better to be clear, isn't it? Madame Nye's lips twitched, but she waved her hand. "Do as you like." I cleared my throat and read the inventory aloud. 8,000 taels of silver, 2,000 of gold, 12 houses, 5 estates, 3,000 mu of farmland, 1 camellia wood canopy bed, 1 rosewood couch, 1 ebony beauty's couch, a zither table, a scholar's desk. Madame Nye's expression darkened with each item. As I read each entry, servants brought out the corresponding objects from storage, tagging them with red slips. I went on. A pair of gold-plated rui scepters inlaid with jade, a pair of blue and white porcelain plum vases, a pair of jade horses, 2 strings of agarwood bracelets, 6 boxes of boxwood combs. Madame Nye's hand, holding her teacup, began to tremble. I continued calmly. 3 white porcelain fruit dishes, 1 green jade pine tea set. At that moment, a page crept over and tagged her teacup with a red slip. Madame Nye's brows shot up as she shouted. "What are you doing?" The page jumped back in fright. I widened my eyes in innocence. "Mother, the tea set you're using is from Madame Dong's dowry." Her face turned from red to green, as if she'd swallowed a fly. She slammed the cup down and stormed out. "Take your time reading." "I'm done." "Safe travels, mother," I said with a courteous bow, watching her leave. Madame Dong's dowry was truly astonishing. Just counting everything took 3 days, moving it all took 4. The once grand household was suddenly emptied. Even the Marquis's favorite set of rosewood officials' chairs in the main hall was carried away. Yun Kei gleefully told me. When we packed up, the main lady ground her teeth in rage. It was so satisfying. I looked at the stack of deeds, titles, and thick banknotes in my hand and replied calmly. "What we took is just a small part, the truly valuable things are all here." Yun Kei's eyes widened. Heavens! So our young master was so discreet all this time. Everyone thought he was penniless. Who could have guessed his late mother left behind such a fortune? After everything was ready, I wrote to Lu Xiuan, telling him to rest assured. From the day I left the Marquis's house, I felt like a caged bird set free, at last, able to live as I pleased, never having to please anyone else. With spring approaching, I spent a day inspecting the fields. Recently, I learned that the land next to mine was actually left by Lu Xiuan's mother. For years, the Marquis family had secretly leased it to tenants, managed by Steward's son. All the profits flowed to Madame Ya, leaving not a single coin for Lu Xiuan. Today, I came to settle this matter. Learning from my previous encounter with bandits, this time I brought not just maids, a coachman, and a page, but 6 strong guards to protect the carriage. Steward's son, seeing my youth, tried to stall and evade, but with a mix of firmness and tact, I finally retrieved the deed. I returned in high spirits, about to board the carriage when I noticed a crimson horse beside mine. Suppressing my surprise, I looked up and saw Lu Shua, elder sister-in-law. He greeted, cupping his hands in a show of courtesy. I happened to pass by. Are you heading back now? I hear the mountain road is tough, why don't I accompany you for safety? I smiled politely. What a coincidence. Coincidence. I scoffed inwardly. We weren't headed in the same direction at all, what sort of looking after was this? I ignored him and let Bai Ling help me into the carriage. Inside, Yun Ke whispered. Madam, was second young master deliberately looking for you? Even a naive girl like Yun Ke could tell there was nothing proper about Lu Shua's intentions. No need to bother, I replied, closing my eyes and resting against the carriage wall. Those who once ignored me, now that I was married into another house, suddenly took an interest. What could he possibly be scheming? A month remained until the palace exams, he certainly had too much time on his hands. As luck would have it, halfway home, a heavy rainstorm hit. The already rough road became impassable with mud, and the carriage wheels were stuck. Lu Shua rode up beside us and said, Elder sister-in-law, there's an abandoned temple up ahead. Why not wait out the storm there before continuing? It was our only option. We all turned toward the temple. It was dilapidated, but at least the roof didn't leak. Bai Ling and Yun Ke swept out a dry corner, laid out mats, and invited me to rest. The pages started a fire. All the men waited outside, only I and my 2 maids stayed in the main hall. Spring was still cold, and I hugged a hand warmer, lost in thought as I watched the flames. Elder sister-in-law. Lu Shua called from the doorway. I have something to ask, might you spare me a moment? Clearly, he was up to something. I didn't bother pretending, and refused outright. No. He acted as if he hadn't heard and stepped inside. Seeing this, I stood and retreated. Bai Ling and Yun Ke quickly placed themselves in front of me. Lu Shua laughed, his voice tinged with bitterness. I'm not a bandit, do you need to be this wary? Second young master, men and women should keep their distance. If you have anything to say, speak from the doorway, I can hear you just fine. My tone was cold and firm. Lu Shua stepped right up to us, though blocked by my maids, his gaze never left me, eyes burning. Elder sister-in-law, I just want to hear one thing from you, did you give up on me because of Shui Xian? I knew well he couldn't let go of this, it was nothing but wounded pride, a refusal to face the truth. I knew it was time to be absolutely clear with him. In this life, I didn't want any more entanglement with Lu Shua. I stepped past my 2 maids, my voice calm but firm. I once gave my whole heart to you, second young master, but you treated me as if I were invisible. People are made of flesh and blood, we both know how you have treated me. You prefer women who aren't like me. I finally woke up and let go. So why make things hard for me now? My answer did nothing to appease Lu Shua. He raised his voice. Why did you choose my brother? In what way am I inferior to him? Do you really think he's better than me just because of his mother's dowry? I'll have a future 10 times brighter than his. Did he even hear himself? I pressed down my irritation, replying coldly. Who I marry is my own choice, it has nothing to do with you. I wish you all the best in finding your match. You married my brother just to humiliate me. You did this to get revenge because of Shui Xian, didn't you? He grew more stubborn, not even caring if he smeared Lu Xiuan's name. You really believe Lu Xiuan is some paragon of virtue? He doesn't go to brothels not because he's upright, but because he's poor. Second young master. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore and cut him off. I know exactly what kind of man my husband is. I don't need your reminders. Now that I'm his wife, I will stand by his side, through anything. I am your elder brother's wife. Please mind your words. Lu Shua shook with rage, pointing at me. You'll regret this. You will, I swear. I'll never regret it. I met his eyes, unwavering. I'd died once in my last life. If I was wrong again in this one, I still would have no regrets. Lu Shua glared at me for a long moment, but finally fell silent. He wiped his face, then turned and plunged into the rain, his page running after him. Second young master. Second young master. I let out a long breath, hugging my hand warmer as I sat back down on the mat. My two maids stayed so still they hardly dared to breathe. Nothing about today leaves this room, I instructed. Bai Ling and Yun Ke, terrified, immediately knelt and swore never to speak a word. When the rain eased, I ordered the carriage prepared for our return. That night, as I was recording the accounts in my study, Bai Ling rushed in, reporting. Madam, the Marquis's house sent word, second young master fell from his horse on the way home, caught in the rain, and is now burning with fever, unconscious. I didn't even pause in my writing. Bai Ling hesitated before adding. Madam Nia sent someone to invite you to come see him. I am not a physician, I replied, frowning. Bai Ling looked troubled. The servant said Madam Nia insisted, you must come. I sighed, setting my brush aside. When I arrived at the Marquis's house, I learned the Marquis himself was in the palace and not at home. A maid led me to Lu Shua's courtyard. Inside, nursemaids, nannies, and pages were in a flurry, boiling water, brewing medicine, all in chaos. I was forced into Lu Shua's sick room, face to face with Madame Nia's hostile glare. On the bed, Lu Shua burned with fever, his face flushed, deliriously calling. Lei. Lei, don't go, don't hate me. I pretended not to hear, only greeted Madame Nia with formal courtesy and asked about his illness. Don't play dumb. He met you today and now he's fallen from his horse. Madame Nia snarled, her teeth clenched. If anything happens to my son, you'll pay for it with your life. She didn't even bother with her usual pretense, directly showing her face to me. Mother and son, so utterly unreasonable, there was no need for me to be patient. I laughed coldly. Mother, what kind of rule says a sick younger brother's illness is his sister-in-law's fault? If this story got out, wouldn't it be the talk of the city? Even if my reputation doesn't matter, you should consider his. The whole incident with Shui Xian just blew over, and the exams are coming up. Shouldn't you be urging him to focus, not stirring up more trouble? Madame Nia was left speechless, gasping for breath as her nurse helped her. You are a disaster. She managed to spit out. I dusted my sleeve, my words gentle but pointed. Don't be angry, mother. Second young master is lucky, perhaps he'll recover by tomorrow. She ground her teeth. You'd better pray for his safety. Inwardly, I scoffed. I didn't want revenge, but I certainly wasn't charitable enough to pray for him. Lu Shua's fever lasted all night. Madame Nia had me detained in the courtyard, making it clear, if he didn't wake, I wasn't to leave. I endured until late the next morning, barely having a few bites of breakfast, when Madame Nia sent someone again. Lu Shua had awakened, and wanted to see me. My face remained cold as ever. Bai Ling and Yun Ke accompanied me to the door but were barred from entering. Lu Shua leaned weakly against his pillow, Madame Nia and a maid tending him, spooning medicine into his mouth. When he saw me, he immediately pushed the bowl away. Mother, let me say a few words to her. He whispered hoarsely. Madame Nia glared at me, then led the servants out. Lei. Lu Shua reached out his hand to me. I stood 3 paces away from him, not moving a step closer. Second young master, please show some respect. In my previous life, after we married, he would often call me Lei. Hearing it now only made me feel sick. Lei. His voice was full of despair. I had a dream. Even while you were 10 months pregnant, I married your younger sister as a concubine. On the night I took her in, you died in childbirth. It was as if lightning split the sky. I couldn't stop myself from trembling. What was he saying? How could he possibly know? Did he remember the past life too? Lei. In the dream, I saw you stop breathing. Even the child never saw the world. I was so full of regret I couldn't bear it. I held you, called your name over and over, but you never woke up. He cried out, then dissolved into coughing. He really did remember. I felt the world spin, darkness clouding my eyes. I had to grip the table beside me just to stay upright. Lu Shua sobbed, his voice hoarse. Now I understand why you hate me. I don't blame you for refusing to marry me. It's my fault, Lei. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Will you forgive me? I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palm. Only pain could keep my mind clear. Such belated apologies meant less than nothing. Even if he knelt and begged, no amount of tears could erase what I suffered in my past life. What sin had my unborn child committed? What sin had my aged father, who fell ill with anger because of me, committed? What sin had I committed? Could crocodile tears and an "I'm sorry" ever be worth forgiveness? I was not someone who lacked backbone. Watching him weep and wail, I turned away, pinching my own leg until it hurt. For a long time, only his sobs filled the room. It was a long time before I calmed myself, took a few steadying breaths, and forced back tears that were not worth shedding. Turning around, I offered a faint, distant smile. Second young master, you must be delirious. Dreams aren't real. You're just confused from the fever. Take your medicine and rest. No. That wasn't a dream. It really happened. He jumped from the bed, trying to reach for me. I stepped aside at once, my gaze sharp. Don't force me to call for someone. Lu Shua looked at me in despair, finally slumping back on the bed, murmuring. After you died, my brother beat me and called me heartless, said I never deserved you. My heart trembled. So even after I died in that other life, there was more I never knew. Lu Shua buried his head in his hands, full of self-recrimination. It was my fault. I don't know how to make it right, but now it's all too late. What's spilled cannot be gathered. At least he understood, too late. I seized the chance to say. Second young master, I am your elder brother's wife now. Let's not linger in the past. We should each live our own lives. He looked up suddenly. So you remember too? You know it wasn't just a dream. I answered indifferently. I'll consider everything you said today to be feverish delirium. Once I leave this room, I won't remember it again, and I hope you never bring it up either. Your brother and I still have half our lives ahead of us. I don't want him to hear any unpleasant rumors. Lu Shua glared at me, his eyes red and wild. Before he could speak, I bowed and said calmly. Second young master, take care. I turned to go, and heard his bow echo behind me. Lei. I won't give up. I'll win the exams and win you back. I smiled coldly, looking over my shoulder. I'd rather die again than ever marry you. The moment I left, I heard the sound of things shattering inside. Madame Nia rushed over, demanding furiously. What did you say to him? Mother, I take my leave. I bowed lightly, and walked right past her without another glance. In my past life, Lu Shua was so lazy and wild that I had to force myself to be the villain, pushing him to study day and night before he barely passed the exams. In this life, who knew if he could pass on his own merit? But I worried more that, as he threatened, he would keep pestering me. If he truly tried to ruin my peace, I would simply follow Lu Xiuan into the military camp, banish for a year and a half, and let him test his resolve. A dog can't change its nature. I didn't believe for a moment that a single dream would change his ways. Over a month later, the results of the imperial exam were posted. Lu Shua's name was not on the list. It's not right to rejoice at others' misfortune, but I truly breathed a sigh of relief. What delighted me even more was what followed. After failing the exam, Lu Shua drowned his sorrows in wine and, in his drunkenness, crossed the line with a distant cousin, Miss Chow. In my previous life, I'd met Chow Shi, plain in looks, arrogant in temper, without any real ability. Back then, when I married Lu Shua, she'd even acted jealous. She must have liked him all along. Though her family wasn't powerful, they were respected and upright, and being relatives, they would not tolerate a scandal. With no choice, Madame Nia had to arrange for Chow Shi to become Lu Shua's main wife. At the wedding banquet, I attended as well. On his wedding day, Lu Shua looked utterly miserable, his gaze dark, constantly glancing at me with resentment. I smiled brightly from afar, raising my glass in a toast. Thank you, Miss Chow, for saving me from a lifetime of trouble. My mood was so cheerful, I had a few extra cups. Not long after the wedding, news kept coming from the Marquis's house. As expected, Chow Shi was not easy to deal with. As soon as she entered, she dismissed all the maids in Lu Shua's quarters and replaced them with women who were plain or plump. If he snuck out for a drink, she would tattle straight to Madame Nia. The Marquis and Madame Nia, already simmering with anger over his failed exams, immediately cut off his allowance, banned him from seeing his disreputable friends, and forbade him from leaving the house without permission. Lu Shua raged, arguing day and night with Chow Shi, while his relationship with his parents became open warfare. Time flew by. Spring came again, and I had been married to Lu Xiuan for almost a year. Since his last commendation, Lu Xiuan hadn't been home once. During that time, he was promoted yet again, now holding the rank of Jinwei captain. Just before New Year, Lu Xiuan finally returned. He came through the door, his face weathered from travel, and I helped him bathe and change. After half a year apart, he had become even steadier and more imposing. When I undressed him, I saw his back was covered in scars, some still red and healing. Lu Xiuan soaked in the bath as I reached out, fingers brushing over the scars, and felt a hot ache prickle at the corners of my eyes. I knew just how hard he'd fought this past year. No one outside believed that marrying him was the right choice. There were endless whispers and sly remarks behind my back. He had never been someone who cared about rank or fame, yet now, for the sake of my reputation, he risked his life time and again, braving dangers that most men would avoid. Only by staking everything did he manage to rise 3 ranks in a single year. Lu Xiuan held my hand and quietly said, "Nianzi, will you make me a peace amulet?" My voice choked a little. "Yes. I'll go to Sanqing Monastery soon and get you another peace lock as well." He turned and kissed my hair at the temple. I suddenly recalled what Lu Shua had once said, in our past life, after I died, Lu Xiuan had beaten him. Did it mean that, even then, Lu Xiuan had cared for me? If that were true, heaven really hadn't treated me unfairly. In my past life, I blindly loved the wrong person and paid with my life. In this one, I could spend my days with someone who genuinely cherished me. I wrapped my arms around his broad chest from behind. His gaze as he looked at me burned even hotter. Halfway through our bath, he swept me up and carried me into the inner room. On the second day of the new year, when we went to visit my mother's family, I prepared generous gifts for every relative. My elder brother and his wife were home for the holiday as well, so the whole family sat together for the first meal of the year, full of laughter and warmth. Lu Xiuan's post wasn't considered high or low, but he was just over 20. If he kept advancing at this pace, his prospects would be limitless. At first, my mother wasn't fully satisfied with such a son-in-law, but after seeing his rapid promotions and how well he treated me, she finally felt at ease. During the feast, I watched Jiang Yuehuan out of the corner of my eye. I'd always thought she was infatuated with Lu Shua, so much so that she would use any means to become a favored concubine in the Lu family, just like the last life. But this time, she showed no interest in him. Instead, during our visit home, she kept stealing glances at Lu Xiuan, blushing and ducking her head every time their eyes met. It became clear to me then, Jiang Yuehuan didn't truly love Lu Shua. She only wanted to compete with me. I kept my silence, waiting to see if she'd try. After the 5th day of the new year, Lu Shiuan had to leave again. I saw him off at the gates. He was reluctant to let me go, hugging me over and over before finally mounting his horse and riding away. A month later, I was diagnosed as pregnant. It must have been the New Year's festivities that brought me this happiness. Having struggled through a difficult labor in my past life, I carried an ever-present fear of childbirth. So as soon as it was confirmed, I shut myself away, never leaving the house, and called for a physician every few days. My mother, upon hearing the news, took it very seriously. She immediately sent 4 experienced matrons to care for me, along with several of her own most trusted maids to manage every detail in the household. Luckily, I had taken good care of my health these past 2 years. Aside from the early days of anxiety and sleeplessness, my pregnancy was smooth and healthy. I wrote home to inform Lu Shiuan about my pregnancy, urging him to look after himself and not worry about me. Once I felt secure about the child, I resumed managing the household accounts, though my heavy body prevented me from inspecting things in person. With less than 2 months left until my due date, a great victory was reported from the frontier. Lu Shiuan, stationed at the border, had defeated a band of foreign raiders. Among the prisoners captured were remnants of the last dynasty's traitors. He successfully persuaded them to surrender, led the troops on a long pursuit, and rooted out the last of the rebels, eliminating a major threat to the court. The emperor was overjoyed, breaking precedent to promote him 3 more ranks, granting him the title of Dingyuan General of the 5th rank, with a crimson ceremonial robe and a silver-belted jade sash. When the news reached the capital, the whole city was abuzz with celebration. Though the main army hadn't returned yet, imperial rewards were delivered to our household in advance, and relatives and friends filled the gates with their congratulations. He was still away, and I was heavily pregnant, so I declined to receive guests, merely accepted the gifts and registered them, handing everything over to the authorities as was proper. The Lu household also sent someone with congratulations. I accepted the family's gifts without a second thought, and sent back generous thank you gifts in return. Just before the Mid-Autumn Festival, the army returned in triumph. After his long journey, Lu Shiuan first entered the palace to report, then came home. It happened to be the Mid-Autumn Festival, he had just been promoted, and I was close to giving birth, 3 great blessings at once. We decided to host a moon-viewing banquet in our home, inviting both the Lu and Jiang families. Lu Shiuan didn't want me to be too tired, so he asked my mother and my elder brother's wife to help, as well as the stewards and senior maids to take care of all the arrangements. On that day, men and women sat in different courtyards. The tables overflowed with crab, chicken, fish, all sorts of seasonal fruits, and we even hired an opera troupe to perform. There was laughter and excitement everywhere. We sent invitations to the Marquis's household. The Marquis's wife and several uncles came, but Lu Shua claimed illness and did not attend. At the banquet, I became the center of attention, with the other ladies constantly praising me. They all took turns toasting me. I could only return the gesture with tea in place of wine. My mother and Madame Nia sat at the same table. After a few cups and all the flattery, my mother became even more lively, exclaiming, "I always knew my son-in-law had a bright future. They say good wine needs no bush, he was just hidden away before." When I first married Lu Shiuan, my mother endured no end of snide remarks from the court ladies and couldn't even hold her head up. Now, she could laugh openly and proudly. The other ladies chimed in. "I say, Lei truly has good fortune and a keen eye, marrying a husband so upright and devoted. Who wouldn't be envious?" "That's right. Lei has the look of one who brings luck and prosperity." In just over a year, her husband's risen 4 ranks. They really are a perfect couple, talented and beautiful. Everyone raised their cups again and again, and I could only keep smiling and politely returning the greetings. Madame Nia, for once, was unusually quiet. Though she kept a smile on her face, her eyes betrayed no joy. Her own son had failed the exams, her new daughter-in-law was a disaster, and her household was in chaos. In contrast, my side was nothing but harmony and celebration. While everyone was still drinking and laughing, Bai Ling slipped in quietly and whispered in my ear. "Third miss, send word through Duchuan, she's lured the general out." I kept my expression steady, glancing toward Jiang Yuehuan's seat. She had already been gone for a while. Using the excuse of changing clothes, I left the banquet. Bai Ling wrapped a cloak around my shoulders and led me out to the bamboo grove in the neighboring courtyard. From behind a rockery, I saw Jiang Yuehuan and Du Chuan with their backs to me, peering furtively ahead. A mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. I wanted to see what tricks Jiang Yuehuan would try, and whether Lu Xiuan would fall for them. A few breaths later, footsteps sounded ahead. Lu Xiuan appeared, dressed in a deep blue robe, walking calmly with his attendant, Tong Yen. My heart skipped a beat, I felt a faint nervousness. Jiang Yuehuan seized the perfect moment, crying out. She tumbled out from behind the rockery, hurling herself toward Lu Xiuan. But he, with his practiced martial skill, sidestepped her easily the instant he saw a figure rushing over. Jiang Yuehuan missed her mark and, unable to stop in time, crashed hard onto the stone walkway. The sound made everyone jump. Clearly, her fall was no light thing. I found myself shrinking my shoulders in sympathy. Lu Xiuan, seeing it was a young woman, instantly stepped back. Tong Yen whipped out his staff and pointed it straight at Jiang Yuehuan, shouting. "Shameless woman! How dare you try to ambush my general?" He raised his staff, ready to strike. Du Chuan, panicked, rushed out to shield her mistress, pleading. "General, please have mercy. This is our household's third miss." As she spoke, she helped Jiang Yuehuan to her feet. At this point, Jiang Yuehuan's face was bruised, her hair in disarray. Lu Xiuan frowned more deeply. "Third miss. What are you doing here?" Jiang Yuehuan, eyes brimming with tears, could only stammer. Lu Xiuan held up a letter, his tone severe. "Did you write this? Do you know forging military dispatches is a grave crime?" I just happened to be passing by." Jiang Yuehuan replied, trembling, her voice a confused mumble. Tong Yen stepped closer, sniffed the letter, then sniffed her, and declared. "General. It was her. The scent on the letter matches the fragrance on her exactly." Jiang Yuehuan had no way to defend herself now. Lu Xiuan tore the letter up, voice icy. "Since you are my wife's half-sister, and this is your first offense, I'll overlook it this time. If there is a next, don't expect any mercy for family ties." With that, he turned and left, leaving Jiang Yuehuan stamping her feet and weeping behind him. Satisfied at the spectacle, I quietly slipped away. Back at the banquet, I acted as though nothing had happened. Most of the Lu womenfolk had already departed. My mother leaned over and whispered. "Your so-called mother-in-law wore such a long face after you left the table, you'd think we owed her tens of thousands of taels. The moment you got up, she excused herself and left." Once she was gone, the rest of the Lu relatives didn't linger, either. I simply smiled, saying nothing, while Jiang Yuehuan only returned much later. Her face was covered in bruises, nose and forehead scraped from gravel, a pitiful sight that immediately drew a crowd of concerned aunts. Jiang Yuehuan excused herself, saying she'd drunk too much and had slipped on her way to change clothes. One sister-in-law worried around. "That's quite a fall. You'd best have a physician take a look. A young lady's face mustn't be scarred." The conversation turned, as always, to her marriage prospects. Her mother was once a maid in my father's chambers, but when my mother was pregnant with me, she volunteered herself and became his concubine. She always wanted a good marriage for Jiang Yuehuan, but was too choosy. Scholarly but poor suitors didn't please her, wealthy merchants weren't to her liking either, she only wanted her daughter to marry into a grand family. My mother had introduced several matches, but her concubine dismissed them all, so eventually she gave up. Now, with only half a year until she turned 18 and no betrothal in sight, Jiang Yuehuan's anxiety was easy to understand. One aunt turned to me and joked. "Lei, why not ask your husband if there's a young officer in the army still unmarried? Maybe he can match one for Yuehwan. I said yes, but only smiled inwardly. All the young officers without wives are of humble rank, hardly what would satisfy Jiang Yuehwan's ambition to soar like a phoenix. Now that Lu Xiuan had risen to the 5th rank, she finally deemed him worthy. I turned and asked, "Third sister, what kind of husband would you like?" Hiding her battered face behind a fan, Jiang Yuehwan replied softly, "Someone just like brother-in-law, truly wonderful." She really knew no shame. Before I could respond, my elder sister-in-law snorted. "Third miss, you certainly have big ambitions. When your brother-in-law married Lei, he was just a lowly 9th rank officer. Now, thanks to her, he's climbed 4 ranks, there are few like him in the capital. If you want a husband like that, not even the best matchmaker would dare promise it." My elder sister-in-law never liked Jiang Yuehwan or her mother. Now, in front of all the relatives, she made no effort to spare her feelings. Jiang Yuehwan's face burned red as she muttered, "I was only saying so, sister-in-law. No need to make such a fuss." My sister-in-law raised her cup, half serious, half in jest. "Second sister was only asking out of kindness, but you treat it as a joke." Flustered and speechless, Jiang Yuehwan could only fall silent, and I smiled to smooth things over. "I'll ask your brother-in-law to keep an eye out. There are plenty of unmarried 9th rank officers in the army." I deliberately shifted the topic, leaving her awkward and quiet. That night, Lu Xiuan gently raised the subject of Jiang Yuehwan with me. Though a military man, he wasn't a fool. How could her intentions escape him? I thought he might try to smooth things over, but he was blunt. "That sister of yours is far too scheming. I fear she'll cause even greater trouble someday." I told him of my idea to help find her a match. He looked genuinely disgusted. "I wouldn't dare match such a restless woman to anyone. Wouldn't that be harming someone else?" Clearly, Lu Xiuan had no patience for her act. Laughing, I tapped his forehead. "I was just making polite conversation. I doubt anyone we suggested would even interest her. Let's not speak of her anymore. You're tired, time to rest." He snuffed out the lamp and pulled me to bed. 10 months pregnant, I waited for the day of delivery. When the time came, the pain was like dying and coming back to life. The physical pain I could bear, but the fear haunted me, memories of that tragic end in my previous life still vivid. I dreaded falling unconscious and never waking again. Lu Xiuan waited outside the door, desperate to come in, but they kept him back. I bit down on a soft stick, clutching the bedclothes with all my strength. I had found someone who truly loved me. I could not just leave this world so easily. At last, the sharp wail of a newborn cut through the night. Our first child was born. The midwife beamed. "Congratulations, madam. It's a healthy, fair-skinned little boy." I was too exhausted to speak. Gazing at the child's wrinkled face, tears streamed down my cheeks. Lu Xiuan burst into the room, kneeling at my bedside and gripping my hand. His eyes were red, too moved for words. After all the pain and bitterness, this time I had finally lived up to my own heart. 15 years later, Lu Xiuan had amassed countless achievements, rising to Deputy 2nd Rank Grand General, surpassing even his maternal grandfather's rank. When a new emperor ascended the throne, seeing how many years he had given to the frontier, and, too, to recover military power for the throne, he was recalled to the capital. By then, I had borne him 3 daughters and a son, surrounded by children and grandchildren. Jiang Yuehwan, meanwhile, was married off by her mother, who made all the arrangements herself, to a widowed old marquis. My parents could do nothing to stop it. After marriage, she fought daily with her husband's daughters and daughters-in-law. She gave birth to a son, but before she could enjoy her happiness, the old marquis discovered the boy wasn't his, but rather the child of a junior son. Still, to avoid scandal, he acknowledged the child as his own but soon exiled her to a remote country villa under the pretense of illness. As for Lu Shua and Chao Shi, after 5 years of marriage without children, Madame Nia filled his quarters with concubines and handmaids. Yet any who conceived were quickly dealt with by Chao Shi. Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law waged endless battles, and Chaoshi even pushed her own maids into the Marquis's chambers. The old Marquis, entranced by his new beauties, left Madame Nia bedridden with rage. The entire Marquisate was thrown into chaos. In the end, Lu Shua divorced Chaoshi on the grounds of barrenness. Free from a miserable marriage, he spent his days carousing, claiming that since he could not marry his true love, he would rather live alone. Past the age of 30, he still had no son. The Marquis and Madame Nia, desperate to continue the family line, forced him to marry the daughter of a low-ranking official as his main wife. Due to years of debauchery, he developed a chronic illness and sought cures everywhere. It was not until the 6th year that a daughter was finally born. No other concubine bore him any children. Lu Shua's scholarly career was equally disappointing. At 30, he finally passed the exam, only to be appointed a low-level provincial officer, far from the capital. No matter how often Madame Nia pulled strings, she could not bring him back. When the Marquis passed away, the family line so thinned, in the end the title passed to Lu Xiuan. But all that is a story for another time. The end.